Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury tracking law, workers' compensation, medical malpractice, dog bites, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. More Injury Funding is a sponsor, member, associate, board member, or business partner of this podcast, Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, Academy of Track Accident Attorneys, Sandy Springs Bar Association, Georgia Association for Women Lawyers, GOL for short, Georgia Association of Paralegals, Atlanta Legal Aid Society, State Bar of Georgia, St. Andrew Rowing Club, and Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In today's episode, I have a special guest with me, Raymond Jones, lawyer, father of twin teenage daughters. Mr. Jones will share his experience with about funding justice, empowering trial lawyers in the evolving world of personal injury throughout Washington District of Columbia. We'll discuss the question of why clients and attorneys need legal funding and what's the purpose of using it in the legal world. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding podcast, Raymond.
Hello, how are you, Laura? How's it going?
Very, very well. We in Georgia, it's kind of hot today. It's actually a little exceptional day, a little bit cooler. So that's about 95 versus 102 yesterday. So hot July 15th or 16th, whatever day is today,
Yeah,
2024.
yep, and it's hot here too. So you guys are sharing your weather. It's just supposed to feel like 104 today,
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. Hopefully
and
we'll
I'm in a
get
suit
some.
and tie.
I see. I feel you. I feel you.
Mm.
So tell us a little bit about your practice, how long you've been practicing, and also how many percent would you say of all of your cases does personal injury take?
So yes, I've practiced now for a little over 20 years. Graduated from American University School of Law here in Washington D.C. Did my undergrad at Temple University in Philadelphia. And yeah, practicing for 20 years. And right now, the personal injury workers' comp takes up about maybe about 50% of the practice, and the other 50 comes from criminal law. So we do quite a bit of work in personal injury, the workers' comp field space. I've been doing it for quite a few years now.
And tell me, you've done quite a bit, within not just within your state, but also outside, AAJ. Tell us about all your nominations, organizations that you belong to.
Yes, I'm a member of the American Association of Justice, as you mentioned. As the short acronym is AAJ. Been a active member for over a decade now. So I went through their leadership academy. I won their well, I was awarded their hold on a second, I forget the name of it. I won their, it's behind me, Distinguished Service Award.
I love it.
I forgot the name, but I was a board member for many years, sat in the board. I um sat on the board for the Minority Caucus. I was chair of their employment rights section at one point. Here locally, I was on the board of the Metropolitan Employment Lawyers way a few years back. Spent about 2 years on that board. Now I'm on the board of the NCIJ, National Civil Justice Institute. So what we do plaintiffs advocacy, that's dedicated to getting the word out to judges and judges forums and things of that nature. So I am a trustee on the board.
Mhm. And how I know that you use legal funding for your clients when it comes to personal injury and workers' compensation cases. How long, or how has the legal funding impacted the personal injury law landscape in Washington D.C. and your practice as well?
Well, it's important. It's important to have because a lot of times the clients come in, they don't have access to any money. They just suffered some injury through no fault of their own, and now they're suffering. So, and then they don't have the income to supplement the lost work. The all those things that come with being injured that people don't look at. You see an accident, for example, and you don't think the ramifications of the injury that comes after that. Not being able to get to work. not being able to use your car. So now you're that how are you going to get to work if you could get to work? Those type of things that come up, that the stuff that people outside the court don't see. You see an injury, you see that, but you don't see behind the scenes of somebody's house. And that's when the funding comes in. That's when the funding can be so important to somebody, helping them get their case moving along, helping them get their lives back in order, at least in that at least until that final outcome.
Mhm. And like everything else, legal funding has its pros and cons. What would you say are the benefits and potential drawbacks of utilizing legal funding in personal injury cases?
Well, so some of the benefits is, as I just mentioned. Some of the drawbacks is that the money has to be paid back. So there is that. So a lot of the criticism is the interest rates and so forth that's going to be charged. But overall, it's a well worth benefit to clients. But it comes with the caveats, and you got to sit down and explain to people, and you got to make sure that they understand what it is and what it is we're doing, what it is you're doing, and how that works to help them get the results they need. And then once they understand that, and it all depends on the person, because not every client will need the legal funding, but a lot of them do.
Hmm. Hmm. And do you normally send your clients to the funding companies directly, or do you talk to funding companies? How do you usually connect your clients to those legal funding
I,
companies whenever necessary?
yeah, I do it. Sometimes I send them just directly, depending on the situation. Sometimes I make an intro myself and I sit there and listen. But I'm involved in some way in any point, especially if I send them directly. Then they'll the funding company will also send me some stuff to take a look at, paperwork and so forth to look at. And then I also advise the client based on that as well. I try to give them some guidance. But yeah, but a lot of times it's a hybrid. Sometimes I send them more to say, here, look into this, and sometimes I do it for them.
Hmm. And since you've been doing, practicing law and working with legal funding companies for 20 years or so, how do legal funding companies determine the funding amount and terms for your clients at your firm? Is that
Well,
something
a lot.
that you have an input, or is that something that they decide on your own? On your own, do you have an ongoing conversation with legal funding companies?
Sometimes they just go with what the client tells them. A lot of times they ask to see my complaint, see what I filed, see thing, and then they give I guess they have a underwriting system that I'm not familiar with the legal funding side, but I know they have like an underwriting system, and they say, okay, well, we think your case is going to be worth this, and they can base any loans or any funding based on that. But a lot of times they ask for my pleadings and so forth, get my input on where the case is at, how long we think the case is going to go, previous settlement offers, sometimes. But we get the client consent that prior, there's some privileged information in there. So they got to have the proper documentation so we can have those discussions and not violate any of the client's privileges or anything like that.
Hmm. And talking about the length of a personal injury case, what would you say is the average length of your personal injury cases if you add them all together and
Oh
look at
wow,
median?
medium. Oh, maybe a year. I'll just say roughly a year, because some settle quickly, depending. But you still got to do your due diligence. You got to work a little bit, and some can go on for years. You have a couple that's 3 years old and 4 years old, and like we're still moving along.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I'll just say roughly in the 20, maybe a year. I say less than a year, but it'll be around that time.
Approximately. Okay.
Yeah, approximately. Yeah, because DC courts tend to move fairly, not extremely quick, but we get a scheduling order. We get our set certain dates. So the average case, even if once you file, and that's once you file something in court,
Hmm.
you're going to get that initial scheduling track, probably going to be a track two with mediation. That's going to be like 6 months. Then you're going to go to mediation. So roughly, and then trying to get in the court with a trial date or anything like that, it's going to be pretty much over a year,
Hmm.
at least now, because our courts are getting busy. And then you're lucky if you get a trial date. You're lucky if you get one in a year.
Hmm. Do you see a huge change during the corona and post corona?
Yes, it seems like there are more cases now. It just seems like everything is taking longer.
Hmm.
Um,
It
it
should be
just
the
seems
other
that
way
way.
around.
Yeah. Yeah.
What advice, Raymond, would you give to other personal injury attorneys? What ethical considerations would you say should be considered when utilizing legal funding for personal injury cases?
Well, you got to take the your privilege and communication serious. What you're going to share, what you're not going to share, and then just make sure that like, hey, I can share this information with you, but I can't share X information with you. Then you got to look at what that funding and the realistic goals of the valuation of your case. So you can't go in and say, well, we're going to get $1 million for this case, knowing that the case is probably only worth 75,000. Or something significantly less. Like you're going to sell that for less. And then the client is disappointed. You're disappointed because then the client takes out some funding that they can't afford to pay back, and you're like, well, remember that loan you took back, 2 years ago that helped you get through those tough times. That loan is now due as well, and then it was so you got to just make sure all that's in place and make sure that there's a clear understanding on what's going on.
That's good. How does legal funding affect the negotiation and settlement process in personal injury cases in Washington, D.C.?
Oh wow, yeah, it can affect because now you're looking at what's got to be, you're looking at all what's been paid out, so now you're adding in, you already had your doctor's fees and everything else, and if you had an expert come in, so you're already looking at those fees that are going to be deducted, and then you're looking at the attorney's fees that are going to be deducted, then you're looking at the loan that was taken out. Doesn't really affect, but as long as like I said, if all that is explained up front to the client and the client is aware, then they know, okay, yeah, I did get that advance, okay, yeah, I did do XYZ. But it can affect, it's just like, okay, what can we how can we sit down and now clear up all the debts, clear up everything else, and then of course make the client happy, and that's the most important, making sure the client is happy.
Always. And what is the statute of limitations in District of Columbia now?
For yeah, 3 years for personal injury,
Hmm.
for auto accidents or anything of that
Hmm.
nature.
And this may be question probably more, should be directed to somebody working in the person or in the legal funding field. But maybe you have an idea what are the current regulations and guidelines surrounding legal funding in District of Columbia.
In the District of Columbia, I don't think anything's changed at this point, but legal funding is perfectly fine as long as the client is knowledgeable about everything that I said. So we don't have any restrictions on legal funding. Like I don't believe there's any disclosure obligations that we have to say, hold this person to the defense.
Mhm.
No disclosure obligation or to the court. Not right now. So legal funding is perfectly fine. Just have that informed client when they're making that decision.
Absolutely. How do personal injury lawyers like yourself and your clients best could navigate the legal funding process in Washington to ensure a successful outcome?
Well, the best thing is I think like getting with the legal funding and learning about their business a little bit, learning about how how they like to proceed, and really sitting down and talking to them and getting a good understanding of what's going on. Even though I'm not in the legal funding business, but I should have at least a conversational knowledge of what's going on. That where I can sit down with you and you just say whatever you're going to say, and I can talk to you, and you're like, okay, he knows what he's talking about.
Mhm. That's helpful. Yes,
Yes, it's helpful.
we as legal funding providers we try to educate and teach our attorneys just as much as we do our clients
Yeah,
when we.
and that works out perfect. Is an attorney has to just be willing to sit down and say, you know what, not just say, here, let me hand you off to this person and come back and talk to me. But that way, that you're an educated attorney now, and you have some knowledge, so you can, at least take the client as far as you can take them, as far as the questions regarding legal funding
Mhm,
will
yes,
happen.
assist your client to the best of your ability.
Exactly, exactly.
And what role does legal funding play in accessing justice for individuals seeking compensation for their injuries in your state?
But it plays a, a major role in some instances. Sometimes clients you don't need it. Sometimes, but for those people who need it, you need it. So when you need it, you need it. It's like anything. Like you don't know what you need until it happens. So it comes in extremely helpful. I mean,
Mhm.
I couldn't put a weighted measure on it, but um, it's important to clients, especially when those, you have clients who are like, nope, we're good, we're fine, everything's good, and then the attorney's like, okay, yeah, I'm good, we're good, we don't need any additional funds or anything. But when it happens, you're thankful. The clients are thankful.
Oh, yes, very
I
much
haven't
so.
run into a client who wasn't thankful. Not yet. I mean, it could come. It probably will come, but not yet.
Hopefully never.
Yeah, hopefully never.
So how do you, Raymond, stand out from other personal injury attorneys in your state? Do you do anything differently? Do you do anything uniquely? What is your Raymond Jones signature?
Huh. Well, I don't. I think I do what I like to think I do what others do is just you try to get that customer centered, client centered focus. Um, some lawyers don't. You try to get on a return a phone call, keep client updated with information, important things. Stand out. Yeah, those small things. It's amazing how many people don't do it. We all know it, but a lot of people don't do it, even though you know it. So, just and then trying to get them a little justice for whatever injury that they didn't cause on their own. Because a lot of times, like this is something that happened to them through no fault of their own. It wasn't like they were looking to get injured. It wasn't like they were looking to spend time in a hospital. And then, now they're looking at a new normal life, whatever that new normal, like, oh, now I'm going to see a therapist 4 days a week, or getting chiropractic 4 days a week. That wasn't happening a week ago, wasn't happening a month ago. So, yeah, we would try to assist the clients in every way we possibly can.
And we really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Mr. Jones, again for this educational and informative story and your thoughts about funding justice, empowering trial lawyers in the evolving world of personal injury throughout Washington, D.C. Can you please tell us, Raymond, how to reach you in case somebody gets injured? Do you have a website, social media
Sure.
platforms?
Yes, you can reach me on my website is attorneyrayjones.com. It's attorney spelled all the way out. Don't shorten it. Um, the phone number is 202-978-1800. And again, that's 202-978-1800. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook under my name, Attorney Jones, which is short. Some people call me Attorney Jones. So
That's so great. Raymond, thank you so much again for being my very special guest at It's Time for More Injury Finding podcast. But before I conclude today's episode, I have one last question for you. You ready?
yes,
Okay. If you had to choose a parallel career today, what would that be and why?
parallel career today. Ah, legal funding.
Okay. Why
I
is
would get
that?
out. I would get out there and help people in that way
I
because I'm
love it.
still in the legal field. You're still helping people. You're still making sure that injured people get their justice and day in court.
And that's wonderful because legal funding combines law and medicine, and that's why I found it
Exactly.
so fascinating. Hmm.
Exactly. See, you saw where I was going.
I love it. Again, that was Attorney Raymond Jones with the Law Office of Raymond R. Jones. I want to thank you all for watching and listening to our story today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury law related topics, follow me, like, and subscribe at More Injury Funding. And it's time for More Injury Funding podcast on Spotify, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, Yelp, a Google business profile, and my website at moreinjuryfunding.com. That's with two O's. Oh, I can't wait to see you, my dear listeners and viewers, again soon at my next upcoming episode. Tune in again soon. Until then, be well. Thank you.